Hi, and welcome back to Pushbox Banter. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Craig. And today we're going to talk about the Canadian Grand Prix. It's going to be a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot of good things, Craig.
Lead-ins, then also like a little bit about the Grand Prix. We're going to talk about some race stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All sorts of things. So much. Oh my gosh.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, so the Canadian Grand Prix, it's been around since or at least the circuit has, since 1967.
Yeah.
It's currently held at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve.
I'm glad you're pronouncing that
Yeah.
and not me because that's
I think I say it
not
all
good at
right.
pronouncing that name. Yeah. Yeah. It's on a man-made island too.
Yes.
Which I find interesting.
What's it called, Craig?
It's called an island. It's man-made. And something about Notre Dame, I believe.
Yeah, it's like Notre Dame. I don't know.
Isla de Notre Dame. I don't know.
Our French
I don't
Canadian
remember
isn't
that
really
portion.
good.
Yeah. My French Canadian's pretty bad. So, and my French is pretty bad too. So,
So it's named after the famed driver Gilles Villeneuve. Super famous, super aggressive. Drove for Ferrari in the 80s.
yeah, he won there like 5 times.
He won there. Yeah, he won there a few times, and unfortunately, he passed in the Belgium GP in 1982. It's known for its unpredictable weather, which it did not fail to show today.
Yes.
Yeah, it was pretty.
Which unpredictable weather's fun for the spectators at least, and maybe the race strategist.
Yes, and with unpredictable weather it means it's very conducive to any position being a contender, right? So 2011 we had Jenson Button. He won from essentially, started 7th, but like won essentially from last place.
Yeah, and so as you guys know, like 2011, that's considered by some, it's considered one of their favorite races of all time, and it's considered one of the best. Obviously the best Canadian Grand Prix race of all time, but it's up there. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, it was pretty cool. He had 4 pit stops, 1 drive-through penalty. I think was quoted saying everything went wrong until it didn't.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, there were like 2 red flags or something like that.
Spent like 2 minutes in the pits and, ended up in last and somehow led half of a lap and won the race.
Yeah, like one of the latter parts on, I guess lap 68, Sebastian Vettel's in front of him. And you can see like the aerial shot. You can see the dry line and the wet line on there because it had been raining off and on a bunch. And Sebastian Vettel just slightly hits a little bit, spins out, and then Button drives right on by.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome. Yeah, and it was also one of the longest F1 races ever. It was like 4 hours and some. So
not because they were driving slow, but
because of the delays and stuff like that. Yeah, totally. It was a good one. And yeah, we saw a little bit of that today. It was super rainy and it was a good race overall. But before that, let's talk about Ferrari.
Yeah, Ferrari. Yeah, this was not their weekend. We go from, what a difference 2 weeks makes,
Yeah.
Really, what a difference that makes. They go from top of the world, winning the Monaco Grand Prix, hometown favorite winning, to this week. They had trouble, and they could kind of see it a little bit in practice, but in quality, they had trouble there. Weren't able to break the top 10, so you got, they just had some problems. And then they get into the race, and right off, Leclerc's on race radio saying something about the engine. Something's not right. They keep telling him to keep pushing on, and so he does. But at some point, he does come back in. He switches tires because they're trying to see what's going on. He turns the car off, and everybody's thinking it's a DNF at that point. And he starts it back up, and he gets back out there to do a little bit of testing. He gets lapped.
Oh, that was so sad. I saw him get he got lapped by like 4 cars like right away.
It was kind of interesting though because of where he got lapped. Like depending on where it was in some of the curves, it could have restricted Verstappen from passing him and the others behind him. So it could have held him up and made it easier for Norris and Russell and Piastri and Hamilton to kind of catch back up. Would have changed the the face of the race. Or potentially.
It could have.
Yeah.
It didn't, though. I think he got out of the way right before or right after the curves. So it wasn't too big of an impact, right?
Yeah, it was close, but it wasn't that much of an impact, and they flew right by him.
He actually took some risks. I think that's why he got lapped. He ended up taking some hards during a yellow flag and during a stop and a safety car, and then ended up just really like a minute behind. It started like 40 seconds, and he just kept tumbling to pass the minute like 13.
Yeah, it was something with his engine. He couldn't overtake anybody. It just didn't have the power. So
yeah.
I don't know if they figured that out or if they just narrowed it down a little bit, but
I think they were figuring it out at that pit stop, took the new tires, and then it just was like, well, this doesn't work. 2 laps later, came back and made another pit stop for some intermediates. But regardless, he ended up retiring. So
yeah.
Sainz also had not a great race. He was looking okay, a little bit in no man's land for a while, and then eventually ended up spun out into the grass, hit Albon on his way out of the grass.
He spun out and ended up hitting Albon. Albon, like in a normal condition, I think Albon probably would have punched it and flew by him on the left, but instead, like he couldn't quite do that. I think he was maybe hesitated just for a split second because it was all wet and it was on a curve. And in those conditions, he probably would have ended up having a shunt as well. But but gets regardless, he's out of the race because of it. Sainz is able to start driving again, but he goes back in and drives it all the way back around and goes back in, and he's done for the day too. So
yeah, it's a bad weekend. One to forget for
no points, not even close. Like they weren't moving up at all.
Yeah. It happens.
Unlike at the very beginning. So the very beginning of this race, we've got some rain. We've got at the very start of it, everybody's the whole like jet stream of water coming out from behind the cars, which I love to see, and that's going on. Everybody's on the intermediates except for 2 people.
The Haas's,
Magnussen and Hulkenberg. And they just start picking people off like left and right, going up the grid. Magnussen's he starts at 14th, I think.
Right.
He gets all the way up to 4th.
To 4th place,
on these wet tires. And then, of course, they start to degrade a little bit or not work as well as intermediates because the track is starting to dry out. They've got a dry line by this time, and it's somewhere around like lap 8, lap 10, something like that. They're not projecting rain. They're saying, well, it might rain a little bit later, but maybe not. So he's got to come back in and pit. And when he does, he just drops all the way back down to 14th, which really...
And it was a terrible pit stop, too.
It was a horrible pit stop. It was like, I felt like a Benny Hill song was going to like start playing as these guys were running out because they weren't ready. The tires weren't ready. They weren't. It was like a 4 to 8 seconds pit stop. It was ridiculous.
8 seconds.
Yeah,
it was 8 seconds.
Yeah. So he's got that going on. Hulkenberg, he keeps moving up, but same type of thing happens with him when he has to change the tires. But it was interesting because nobody could stand in their way. They would just pull up and just pass. It was great watching it.
Yeah, the tires definitely fell. Yeah, they fell away pretty quickly, but it was nice to see at first. It was a lot of drama.
They were like the only ones passing, pretty much.
Pretty much,
I might be wrong on that. Don't hold me accountable.
No,
to it.
I think you're right. At the beginning, we had a little bit of contact again.
Yeah,
Sergio Perez.
Oh
gosh, we can go back a little further if we want. So Sergio Perez, and we'll get to contract talks later, but going into the weekend or going into Saturday, he was looking not that bad, but not looking great at the same time, right? Actually, I think FP3 he was looking decent, and qualifying happened. It looks like conditions had changed, and he didn't seem to get. It seems like every time the conditions change just a tad, it's almost like his whole setup just never works, or he can't just dial it in and get those tires to hook because, again, going out in Q3, basically couldn't get a lap in, had like 3 chances, at a lap, and I think an additional one that he just backed out of and couldn't make it out of Q3.
Yeah.
Which is not good when you're in a Red Bull.
Yeah,
And
it's really bad in a Red
Bull. Like I just couldn't believe it. A little shocked. I had the same shocked look I had like 2 weeks ago, where I was just like, "What is this?"
Yeah. Whenever. Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, we were not watching qualifying together. We did watch the race together this week, but yeah. Yeah, I imagined that was what was going on when I saw that. I was like, "Oh man, Daniel's going to be hurting right now."
Yeah, so it
did. He was only like what 0.2 of a second out from from making it into the next round.
Yep.
I mean, there wasn't like this massive difference, but at the same time, like he just couldn't make it up. And then they called him back into the pits, and he had I think around 4 minutes left in the qualifying session, and they kept him in the pits. So evidently, like they didn't figure.
Yeah.
I guess whatever they thought was wrong, they didn't think they could fix in that time frame. So, so they kept him there, which to me, that man,
it's not good for him. But starting 16th, ends up getting in a little wheel to wheel with Gasly. Ends up taking some of his end plate off from his front wing. And you could see him like just kind of hovering in 16th, 17th.
Yeah.
I think at some point in first pit stop, I think during the Logan Sargent yellow, he came back in and actually got a new front wing. But regardless, it was not good for that one Red Bull. Starting the race.
Ended up like later in the race spinning out a little bit and.
Yeah,
the rear end of his car kissed the wall a little bit, and
a little too hard. Yeah,
and
I think he was getting investigated too for unsafe driving conditions or something, like driving with
that's true.
that wing kind of like hanging off.
Yeah, because it looked like it was about to fall off. But yeah, that might get he might have a penalty to start the next race. I don't know.
Yeah, Norris was looking good. He was. He at one point takes the lead from both, he was behind Russell, behind Verstappen, and ends up taking a lead at one point and ends up getting messy in the pit stops.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So Norris, he's actually, once he gets into first place, he's rolling very, very well and faster than the other guys. So, it comes to a point where he decides to pit. Actually, let me back this up just a little bit. So, whenever Logan Sargent has his little incident, he spins out. He's not able to continue. There's a yellow safety car coming out. So Norris actually gets behind the safety car. But because of where they are, because he's far enough in front of Verstappen, Piastri, and Russell, those guys pit. Norris has to take another lap. By the time that everything comes back around and so forth, Verstappen's in such a place that he's able to get back, and be behind the safety car, and he's the one that's taking over first at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't take the lead when going into the pits. I think the safety car came out right as he was kind of going past the pits.
Right.
So like he didn't really, he wasn't able in a position. He wasn't in a position to take advantage of that. So
So this time, like he was able to take advantage of it in Miami, but this time he was not. He came back, and Verstappen was able to take advantage of the safety car in this case. Yeah.
We had some sporadic rain.
We had some sporadic rain, and kind of it enabled some situations to happen where Norris was able to pass Russell and Verstappen. There were also times where Verstappen was able to pass them as well. There was an incident where Norris, when he did go into the pits later, he was ahead of Verstappen. He goes into the pits. Verstappen comes back, and Norris is coming out of the pits first, but because of the wetness of that lane, it hadn't dried.
And he was on slicks.
So it was taking his car longer to warm up. And you could see the pictures of him. He's like, you know, he's losing control and everything.
He almost put it in the wall right after that.
Pretty much. So he comes out ahead, but then because of that, Verstappen's able to pass him, and he doesn't give it back up at that point.
Yeah. I think he ends up getting passed by Russell as well.
Yeah,
shortly.
Russell passes him. And then there's a point where Russell kind of loses a little bit of control, I think, later, and Norris passes him.
That's right.
There were a lot of overtakes this time.
Yeah.
There were so many more than the last race. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah. I mean, just then, right? Like Norris is in front. He gets out of the pits. Verstappen overtakes him right at that pit exit, and then Norris gets picked off by Russell. Then they're kind of fighting it out. I think Lewis gets involved in this fight at some point, and eventually we end up with Russell in third, coming back after getting. I think Russell got picked off by Lewis as well, and then he overtakes Lewis to get third again.
Yeah, so we've got with Sainz and Albon, whenever they kind of collided, then at that point there's another yellow, right?
Right.
And so that's when things kind of tighten up, and then we get some of the restart. Russell passes. He tries to pass Piastri at some point, has some contact, goes off the road, gives the position back. Never really took the position to begin with, but and then like Hamilton actually passes him. Hamilton passes Piastri, and I don't know about you, but I was thinking at the time, I was like, man, maybe Hamilton's going to be third.
Hamilton looked
finish
good,
the race for it. He's looking pretty good, but then Russell comes back, is able to pass him, and but neither one. It was too late in the race for them to catch up with Norris. I don't know if they could have or not, but it was interesting watching the race. Verstappen had some times where he lost a little bit of control.
That's right.
And lost a position over it. Norris, same type of thing. Russell, same type of thing. Yeah. So they all had some moments of imperfection, but at the same time they were able to podium on that. Verstappen, I thought, looked great.
He did look really good.
He had some mess ups here and there, but I don't know. Like when he gets out in front, he's hard to catch. And in this case, like he was complaining about some of the things with his car, in practice sessions, the steering not working quite right. In this, like not having the
a locked suspension, similar to Monaco.
Yeah, having some issues with that. Norris, man, for a while I thought he was just going to run away with the race, but he wasn't able to catch up with Verstappen at the end. And I mean, I don't know. It's all of a sudden, we've got Verstappen, Red Bull, and then we've got Norris with McLaren, and then we finished the race with Russell, and then Hamilton with Mercedes. Ferrari's not there.
Yeah.
So now, am I overreacting? Maybe, but now we've got Mercedes in the top four in talk with the top four.
Yeah.
That is of who's doing well. Like Toto Wolff's been telling us, we got things figured out. We're moving in the right direction. Okay, Toto, you've been saying that for like the past 4 or 5 races. Like, do you really? Right. Do you not?
Right.
But here we go. And Mercedes had a really good weekend qualifying. We had like the first, it's the second time ever that the first and second place in qualifying had the exact same time.
Oh, that was pretty cool.
Which is pretty awesome. Russell ends up getting the pole because he was the first person to set that time. Verstappen comes across, sets it, it matches the time later. So, which is really pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Mercedes was running well in quali. They ran well during the race. We've known all along, they've told us all along, hey, it runs better in cooler temperatures. It was a cooler track temperature. It was a cooler race day temperature. And, of course, you had the rain, which helps cool down the tires throughout the race. If they started getting too hot, then they could pull off a little from the race line and run through some water and cool things down a little bit here and there. So they had some things really go their way for their car. But hey, they went their way. Now they got some extra points. So they got some podiums, got some trophies, or a trophy. And and that's all good for them. But it's interesting, like with it's like this car, it's got some good. Maybe they figured out the front wing that it's making the car run better overall.
That's right.
It's giving it better downforce, giving it better grip. Because you saw, like on some of the laps, you saw after changing tires, Russell would come out in that very first lap. The same thing with Hamilton. The very first lap when they'd come out after changing tires, they had really good grip and they were able to overtake or threaten to overtake the cars that were in front of them.
Right. That's right.
So yeah. I don't know. It was kind of exciting to see Mercedes actually it seemed like making or actually have visual evidence of them making progress.
Yes.
Yeah. Instead of just quantifiable evidence. Yes.
Yeah.
Quantifiable evidence from Mercedes of progress instead of just taking Toto's word. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot to unpack, but you're right. Mm-hmm. It seems like Mercedes is finally making some strides. We're starting to see it. McLaren has been doing that for a while now. Ferrari's been there since the start of the season, as has Red Bull, except Red Bull seems to not be progressing as the other ones are, right?
Yeah.
And in them not progressing at the same pace, it looks like they're not doing as well. And it's almost like they're going backwards, considering the issues that Max is having, that Perez can't get a hold of. I mean, it looks like now it's a race of the top four, and with Max not getting the help, or should I say Red Bull not getting the help of Perez in the Constructors' Championship, I mean, who's to say that it's up for grabs? I think it is. And it's looking to me like McLaren is going to be the car to beat. That car looks so balanced and so good and quick. You know, it's not the quickest in the slow speed, but it's quick and it's balanced. I think we've got a lot, or Red Bull's got a lot to worry about if they don't get it together.
Yeah.
And, with Newey leaving and all the stuff surrounding Red Bull, I think it's theirs to lose.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, McLaren's looked really good. And also, like, their tire degradation seems like it's better than all the rest. And maybe that's just a few races, but also like Red Bull, I don't think that they've done like a major upgrade yet at this time. And part of that, like, you can point back to Monaco, with Perez, his wreck. I mean, that's what, somebody was saying it was like $2.5 million.
Yeah, it's like 2.4 or something. Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge chunk of change that comes out of funds to make upgrades to those cars.
Yeah.
So when does that push back their planned upgrades? I think that it does, but maybe I don't know. They don't really schedule out the upgrades and tell them all the time. But if that's the case, then we're continuing to hear specific complaints out of Verstappen that make it seem like they're having to hold off on doing some upgrades and trying to get through with where they are, trying to figure some things out. I mean, we've heard some different things that they're having to do extra simulations to figure out what's going on, that their simulator, I think Helmut Marko was saying something that their simulator wasn't translating or correlating correctly with the performance on the track. So they're trying to figure those things out. Have they figured them out? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Are they on the track? Sure. I mean, Verstappen kind of covers a lot of things. Like, if there's a lot of mistakes, he covers them up because he's so freaking good.
Because he's so good, yeah.
But so is it that, is like, how good is he? Because Perez is a great driver too.
Yeah.
And he's definitely, like, I would say 16th and not finishing is definitely below where the type of driver that he is. He should be in the top 10 or higher every week. But that is at least my opinion. But so, like, how does that correlate with the car? Is Red Bull really that bad? Are they in a bad position? Are they not? I mean, they're still winning races. Verstappen's still able to win. He's extending his lead on the Constructors' Championship or Drivers' Championship.
Yeah.
Red Bull is extending their lead on the Constructors' Championship. They got a little help from Ferrari this weekend. But,
that's right. That's right.
But it's definitely tightening up. McLaren's looking really good, and I think this year, like, we've got a fight.
Yeah, we do.
We got a good fight to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not going to get wrapped up pretty soon.
Good talks to come about
for sure.
Yes.
Speaking of extensions, Red Bull announced Sergio Perez. I know he's had a terrible race, but
2 in a row.
Well, he rewarded Red Bull.
Yes.
With a DNF.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's that talk. You'll see this a lot in all sorts of different sports.
Yeah.
Where someone will get a new contract, and then like right out of the gate, like it's just like they trip and stumble and fall, and then usually they'll pick themselves back up and start moving forward in a positive direction. But this week wasn't the best for his start to that. And with that being said, like he does get the 2-year contract. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I heard is that he, like, out of Red Bull merchandise, like 65% of the profits, like something big, is all based off of people purchasing his merchandise.
Yeah.
Like the Sergio Perez number. So I thought that was kind of interesting, especially since, I mean, you've got like one of the greatest drivers of all time with him, driving around. So I don't know.
Yeah, but he doesn't scream enthusiasm, Max. Like he's just like, oh yeah, I won, great.
Yeah,
Max, I want to go play some video games and do some online racing now.
Yeah,
it's like he's not the most exciting.
It's
like he's not the most marketable type of driver. But anyway,
and also like you've got Perez with being marketable, but you've got Lance Stroll. You got Logan Sargent, and you got Perez as far as the drivers that are in the Americas.
Right.
So, like, he's really big in the Americas.
Yeah.
And so these other drivers that are on the grid, they haven't connected with that audience.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. But
I think we could make an episode of just people or like companies that sponsor Perez, because they're so many, Walt Disney being one of them.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
So I think for any team, they'd want to have him just for the amount of money that he brings with him, right?
And when he wears sunglasses, he does kind of look like he's Tom Cruise.
Yeah, he's Tom Cruise, Top Gun.
He might be. Maybe that's what he was doing.
Yeah, but not a great start to his extension, and it's not the most. I don't think it's the worst thing, because also we knew Monaco and we knew Canada was going to, it's old school type of tracks, has big curbs. The car obviously doesn't like it. There's a disconnect between the simulator, like you said. So the run plans aren't as like straightforward as they would normally be. But, going into the next 2 weeks and going into Europe, I think we'll be able to see the Perez of old and the Red Bull of old, with Max being blowing people out. So we'll see. I think next week is a true test to see where Red Bull is, amongst its peers, the Ferrari, the McLaren, and now with Mercedes. I think it'll be a good show of how quick Mercedes is. But yeah, I mean, congrats to him. That's again one of the drivers I follow the most. So it's nice to see that he's locked up for another 2 years. Though I was curious, I listened to something with Christian Horner saying, we wanted to secure our lineup for 2025. So I'm curious if it's more of we don't know the details, but is it more of you've got an extension for 2025 for sure, and possibly 2026? Like, it's not like clear.
Performance based.
It could be performance based, and I think that's probably what it is, because I know Helmut has been very clear on saying Perez drives better when he's under pressure for a job, a contract, right? So we'll see.
Maybe.
And you know what Alpine is really good for?
Tell me.
Firing.
Yes. They are very good at that.
Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing they're really good at.
Yeah.
It's just firing people. Anyway, they fired Ocon.
but this is part of why they're so good at firing. Like, they fired him, but yet he's still riding with them for the rest of the year.
Yeah. That's
just not coming back.
Not ideal. They did give Jack Dohan a race seat for FP1, but it seemed like it wasn't really a thing with the rain.
Yeah. So they had rain and had some stoppages. So he got to drive around, I think, literally like one lap.
Yeah.
And because of the rain.
The car.
You got in the car, got to sit in the car.
Yeah.
People to talk about him. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I don't know what's going on with them. I think that's
Sainz may be a little jealous, though. It may not want Jack Doohan to be in the race because I think he's going to take over the driver with the best hair as soon as he gets in.
True.
Yeah. Because he said that like his hair, I saw some interview with him, that he doesn't use any product. So It's all natural. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. He's got great hair.
He does.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have, so they're really good at firing people.
Yeah.
So I don't even know where to begin with that.
Well, you've had all of these different, the different director sportifs that have been fired. You've had all these other individuals like go, and it's just like one after the other. There's not a lot of stability on that team.
No,
maybe there's a little bit, but it's also if you're a team that's going backwards and you start losing, and then the next year you lose and you get worse and worse and worse. That's hard to build stability. It's hard to keep people. It's hard to keep people happy. Now, when we look at that, though, they've kind of gradually done a little bit better on each race. Last Monaco, they had some headlines.
They had a point.
They had 1 point. Both cars this week, though, did get points. So we had 9th and 10th place. So they're moving on up. But, it's still not great.
No, it's
not where they used to be.
Yeah, no, it's really not great. I think it's come to the point where it's like, we know Andretti's really gung-ho on entering F1. Maybe it's time. Maybe it's time. I don't know how that team and, doing this with their drivers, doing this with their directors and managers and things like that. Like, how is it that they're going to, how are they promoting their own brand? Right. Like, I don't know. I don't know how that sells cars is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But and what's it do with Gasly? Like, does it inspire future drivers to want to be on that team? Like,
he was on the team, or has been on the team for like 5 years, right? From one sense, like, they're saying, hey, obviously there's a lot of internal issues that we don't know about. We've seen some external issues, but they've stuck around with them. He's done well. Okay there, I guess. Right. They're keeping him on board. They're not just going, hey, you're fired, you're out, you're gone, we're starting somebody else. So they do have some driver continuity. There is a positive spin of that, of keeping him around. He's still seems like he's positive about it and thankful for it. They sent a whole bunch of social media pictures about saying merci to.
They're definitely spinning it. I don't think it's like I definitely think it's not a coincidence that it's coming off the heels of what happened in Monaco. He's not a nice driver, though he says he's a nice driver. Like after today's race, for example. Yeah. But it doesn't help. He never helped his own case, but also that team is just, I don't think, helping itself. And if I were Gasly, I don't know that I'd want to drive for them. Yeah, I get it. They're going to want to drive with whoever. There's only so many seats in F1, and if you have to, drive for Alpine, you're going to do it. But
so, do you think Gasly is trying to find another spot? Because if he is, you've got what? You've got Mercedes. You've got Haas.
I don't think so. I think it wouldn't benefit Alpine to do that at this moment. It almost shores up that he's going to stay with Alpine.
Yeah.
For how long, I don't know. But if I were Gasly, I think I'd be looking elsewhere. Yeah. For my next contract, not this one coming up. Right.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I don't know. It does open the door at Alpine. I heard. I was kind of reading and listening that it might be they might look to open the doors in China, maybe Zhou, or even Sainz is still doesn't really their Sainz has got Williams. It looks like Mercedes closed the door on him. So I think as doors start to close, the less options you have, you got to see what's out there, right? But I'm curious to see where Ocon goes. Maybe Audi, because I don't think that Sainz is going to go to Audi, though that was like the first big push. it's sounding like Sainz might be going to Williams. So who knows?
that was
I
some
mean,
of
it's
the
hard to
talk this
say
week.
because it's nothing but talks.
Yeah, the talk was that Sainz was going to have, like, they were talks about him going to Williams, and then also talks that he was going to reveal who he was going to sign with this weekend. And
Yeah.
that didn't happen. So I don't know really where he's going to go right
Well,
now.
there's a lot of that's the thing, right? There's so many new kind of changes. I didn't anticipate. I don't think anybody anticipated Ocon leaving Alpine, to be honest. So that's kind of a new name now that's out there. Does he go to Audi? Does he go to Haas? I think Ocon's still the type of driver that will be in F1, right?
Yeah.
So I think Carlos is going to Williams. I don't know. Toto mentioned something like basically shut the door on Sainz altogether. So that means it's probably Kimi Antonelli going to Mercedes.
Right.
So, and that Kimi's the priority. So,
there could be a possibility of Ocon going to Mercedes for 1 year if they don't want to bring Kimi in right away. Because I know that he has some ties with Toto.
Oh, yeah, he does have ties with Mercedes, right? Yeah, that's right. I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't either.
Nope.
I don't really think that's going to happen. But, stranger things.
Who do you think is going to lose their drive?
I think Logan Sargent and Joe will lose their drive.
Yeah.
I think Joe has a possibility of keeping it because of his ties with China, and that billion-person market.
Yeah, right.
But at the same time, like, both of these drivers each weekend, it wouldn't be a weekend without them spinning out or running into something.
Yeah.
So it's, Joe did finish the race today. I don't think he had any shunts during the race. Sargent, of course, he did. He had a couple.
Yeah,
a couple of times. I think he literally had one where he spun and his front end just touched the wall enough to where you can kind of feel it through the TV. But not enough to cause any damage, I don't think. So, but it's like it's always happening to him.
Yeah,
and you've got to be able to complete races if you're going to compete. He did have some good qualifying laps. He had some times where in qualifying he was like way up there. I think his highest that I saw him at one point was about 6th, although there was still like 10 minutes left in qualifying, and then he ended up like in 12th, 13th,
yeah,
14th.
But there was also a lot of track
there.
evolution happening.
Yeah, a whole lot of track evolution, but he wasn't able to evolve, and
the track was
evolving.
Well.
The track evolved,
and
he did not. So
that's funny.
That's unfortunate. So I think those two are probably without a drive. Magnussen is iffy to me.
Yeah,
like there's a part that's like, okay, he's going to stay with Haas. They're going to bring on Behrman, and life will be good for him. And if that's great, that may work out really well for him. If that doesn't work, then where does he go? Because I think Sainz will probably end up with Williams. If not, then Audi. So one of those two seats are gone. I don't see Audi having Hülkenberg and Magnussen there.
No.
I just don't see that happening. Where's Bottas going to end up?
I agree with you. I don't think. Oh goodness, Bottas. Yeah, that's another one. I don't think that. I don't think that Magnussen's going to go to Audi.
Yeah,
for sure.
Either. I would be,
and
shocked.
I wouldn't be surprised if Haas gets rid of him.
Yeah,
in favor of like Ocon or something. Yeah, I think Magnussen there's a possibility he's out, possibly.
Yeah.
I agree with Joe 100%. I don't unless it's Alpine, and that really goes for either of them, Joe or Magnussen. I don't think Joe's going to be on the grid. In another one, this may be unpopular. Ricciardo.
Oh, you think he's going to be gone?
I think he's going to be gone. I think they're going to choose Liam Lawson in favor of Ricciardo because Yuki's already tied up for 2025 as of like this weekend.
Yes, so Yuki gets tied up this weekend through 2025. Ricciardo hasn't been yet. I think there's a good chance that happens. However, I think Ricciardo on the money, I don't know this for sure, but I think he makes a lot for them merchandise-wise.
Yeah.
And so, like, if he does really, really poorly, then I think, yes, if he's if he continues to improve and score points and be in the running all the time for that, maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it wouldn't surprise me if he loses that seat. But I think that if he does, well, I don't know. I don't know if another team would pick him up.
I don't think we should lose sight that VCARB is a development team for Red Bull.
That's true.
And if they're not developing people, I mean, we have Yuki that's been there for 5 years, and he still hasn't gotten called up in favor because they've been favoring Perez, right?
Yeah.
So where do they go? Okay, sure, they have Ricciardo with, the idea was always like, oh, maybe he could replace Perez. It's not happening. It's not going to happen. So why not bring in Lawson, who's kind of, really good.
Yeah.
And you have these other teams like, for example, Mercedes already thinking Kimi Antonelli or Ferrari thinking Ali Behrman. You're right. Ali Behrman's probably going to go to Haas next year. Who's going to be next to him? Is it Ocon or is it Magnussen? I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
or is it Ricardo?
No, I think I don't know.
I don't think
we'll
so,
think we'll know. At the end of a couple of weeks for sure where these players end up. But I think Ricciardo would be interesting, and he might just be without a drive.
Yeah. So this kind of brings us to another point. Another thing about brings us to the next race.
Yeah.
The next race being in Barcelona. So one of the things that I'm going to predict about Barcelona is I don't think, well, let me restate this. One of the things that I will predict about Barcelona is that the concerts, if there's concerts beforehand, that they will go on and that the performers will be there and perform. Unlike in Montreal with Pitbull, excuse me, getting the bulls mixed up there. Pitbull had a mechanical on his plane and wasn't able to make it. So all of these fans waited for him for like 2 hours and he never showed, which is pretty bad. And then
I heard of a lot of unhappy fans.
Yeah, and then another weird thing that I do not think is going to happen in Barcelona is the police are not going to turn away fans and tell them that the event has been canceled because of bad weather and send them home, which this happened, I think, on one of the practice session days. Like all these people coming in mass transit and then telling him, hey, you got to leave, this has been closed. And then when the police are questioned about it, they're like, oh, we don't know what you're talking about. We didn't do that. So, yeah. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen in Barcelona. So Barcelona is in a couple of weeks.
I bet it was the mounted police.
The Mounties, yes, wearing their little flat-brimmed hats. And I always think of Bullwinkle whenever I think of that. Probably a weird cartoon. So Barcelona's coming along. It's one of the oldest races. So the Spanish Grand Prix, I think the first Spanish Grand Prix was in 1913. So it's like 100 plus years old. Of course, F1 wasn't around then, but it's okay if we'll give them a pass for that. But we're going to have a race this weekend. So whereas Montreal is one of the more unpredictable races weather-wise, the Spanish Grand Prix is very predictable. So it's going to be warm, nice weather, and corners are going to be nice for everybody. Not slick.
I think a lot of pit stops too.
Yeah.
2 to 3. Possibly.
Yeah.
So
it ought to be pretty interesting. I think that for this time, after what's happened the past few weeks, we're going to see Verstappen, we're going to see McLaren, we're going to see Ferrari and Mercedes compete.
I mean, okay. So who are your top 3? Who's on the podium?
I mean, it's got to be Verstappen.
Okay.
And then I think Norris is going to be up there. Oh, goodness. And then who comes in after that? Is it going to be Ferrari this time? Is it going to be Mercedes? I would say Ferrari is going to be back. I don't know, though. They had some engine issues that they didn't seem too confident with. But I think that their car is going to run a little bit better. But then again, man, I'm a little on the fence with this. I'm probably overreacting to Mercedes' success from this weekend.
You never know. You never know.
Yeah, but that's part of the fun. Yeah. What about you?
Okay, so because we're in Barcelona, I'm going to go with the Spanish speakers.
Nice. Nice.
All right. Carlos Sainz,
Yes.
Sergio Perez, Fernando Alonso.
In that order. Yes. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
We'll see you in Catalonia.
Yes, we will.
But yeah. So that's all I have, Craig.
That's pretty much all that I've got too for
Cool.
right now. I'll have more the next time.
No, it's great.
Yeah.
Well, follow us, like us, comment, good things.
Subscribe.
Subscribe. All on your preferred platforms.
Yes, you know what to do.
You know what to do. Well, Craig,
Yes, Daniel.
it's been great.
It has been great. It's been fun.
It was a good Canadian Grand Prix.
Yes, it was. One for the ages. Maybe that's a little
One for
overstretching.
2024 at least.
But hey, yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
It was a good race. It was a lot. It was a lot. It was exciting. If you haven't watched it, go back and watch it.
Yeah.
You guys will love it. Love it.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Craig.
Thank you, Daniel. All right.